All right, good morning, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the State Water Resources Control Board's Water Quality Fee Stakeholder Meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom and webcast platforms and also is being recorded. My name is David Ceccarelli, and I'm the Fee and Revenue Branch Chief within the Division of Administrative Services. Today, we have many of the Fee and Revenue Branch staff working behind the scenes to ensure that this meeting runs as smoothly as possible. If any time throughout this event you find that you are having any technical difficulties, please email us at feebranch@waterboards.ca.gov. You can find that email on top of the agenda. Also from the Water Board's Fee and Revenue Branch, and assisting me today will be Cassandra White. Individuals attending via Zoom, please use the raise the hand function if you'd like to ask a question or provide a comment. If you are joining through the webcast, you can also submit a comment or question by emailing the email on the screen on the agenda item, which again is feebranch@waterboards.ca.gov. In the past, there has been some delays in the broadcast through the webcast. Therefore, through the meeting, staff may pause so the broadcast can catch up to the listeners. Again, we thank you for joining us virtually today. We thank you for your patience as we've moved into this 100% virtual meeting space. We are doing our best to ensure everyone can participate in an effective way. So I'd like to just go over some meeting guidelines. One, remember to use the handouts that were sent to you via email. If you don't have the handouts, don't worry, we'll be sharing the documents on the screen. You can also request a copy of the documents after the meeting. And the handouts are posted on our fee webpage. Remember, again, at any time you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to us by emailing us. When it's your time to speak, please introduce yourself and who you represent. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. And remember, you can submit comments and questions throughout the event by emailing us. For the meeting to run efficiently and stay on track, we're requesting each participant who wants to ask a question to please ask one question at a time. I understand you may have a clarifying question to your original question, and that's acceptable. Once your question is fully answered, we're going to move on to the next participant's question, and you'll be put back into the order of participants who are requesting to ask a question. In addition, we respect all opinions and input. However, if the discussion starts to move away from the intent of the meeting, which is to discuss water quality fees, then I'm going to ask that the participant and I meet offline to coordinate these discussions further and involve the appropriate staff as needed. At this time, let's go ahead and review the agenda. So second on the agenda is the waste discharge permit fund condition. And then we'll move to the waste discharge permit fund budget cost drivers. And then we'll be giving an overview, a high-level overview of the budget change proposals that are in the governor's May revised budget. Attachment 3 is the waste discharge permit fund program budget detail. And then we have a potential fee change, which has to do with recycled water permits. And then we'll have an open discussion. And then, of course, move on to next steps. So at this point, let's move to the opening slide, which is the fund condition here. And I am going to, give me a second here. Okay, so we're looking at the waste discharge permit fund condition. And one thing, and you know, we talked about this a little bit in the past, and now our accounting office, we've made some great progress, and we are starting to get up to speed and are on a more efficient timeline with closing our monthly reports, which basically gives us more accurate data to report on, especially when we're looking at expenditures and providing um, better projections when it comes to reporting on the fund condition. So I'm looking at where we're at on our forecast for fiscal year 23-24. We started the beginning balance was approximately $10.6 million. And we're looking at our revenues, fee revenue to be about 188, which total fee program revenue would be about $189 million. And then we come down to our expenditures. And so our total expenditures for the program are estimated to be about $190.2 million. Now, when I look at the state operations, so the state operations is projected to be about $174 million. And this is based off of we currently have roughly about 10 months of expenditure data reports. And so we're able to pull the reports, see what staff's charging their timesheets, and to see where we line up with our expenditures. So this is a projection number right now, but we're projecting expenditures to roughly be about $174 million. And of course, the way we project that is, of course, we have nine to 10 months of data, and then we prorate the remaining 2 to 3 months to come up with a projection. Of course, when we come into our next stakeholder meeting, we'll be able to kind of tie into this number a little more closely. And so when you look at this, our expenditures are being 190 million and our total fee revenue of about 189 million puts us at about of a structural deficit in that year about $1 million. So we end the fees ending balance in the WDPF about 9.6 million, which if you look at the fund reserve, it brings us down to about 5.1%. And which is where we've been driving this fund to, roughly around a 5% fund reserve. So moving forward, we always put together this option, of course, forecast of fiscal year 24-25, where if there are no fee changes, it kind of paints a picture of where we'd land at. Definitely we'd have a net loss of about 13 million in the program, with an ending balance of being in a negative about 3.4 million. And so that would draw, of course, the fund into the negative about 1.7%, which is against the rules of the Department of Finance, if I can say that. Finance wants to ensure that we're doing everything properly to keep our funds in the positive. And so looking at 24-25, if everything kind of lines up with our forecast for 23-24, we would begin the year with an adjusted beginning balance of about 9.6 million. Scrolling down to our expenditures are projected to be, based on the May revise, roughly around $201.8 million. And our revenue, we would be collecting revenue, our fee revenue, we'd be collecting that at 201,873 based on the proposals that we'll be talking about here shortly. And so that gives us a gain basically of about $221,000. So it lines up with the program, with the ending balance of about 9.8 million, which then draws the reserve down slightly under 5%, but again, a projection at this point about 4.9%. And then let's just move down to the next part of this. And I know I'll gloss over this. I've talked about this a little bit before. We break this down because this bottom portion is all related to our fines and penalties revenue. And so we collect the fines and penalties revenue. And this revenue cannot be used to support the fee portion of the program, the core regulatory portion of the program when it comes to the fees and the staff that do the fee related work. And so we break this down where we show what we project our revenues to come in from the fines and penalties. And then we also have some expenditures which are authorized by the legislators that that tie into that charge towards the fee revenue. And the reason I show this is because this gets rolled up into our fund reserve that we see on the Department of Finance's website. And so we have to, kind of break this down for the fee setting process. So I wanted everyone kind of to paint this picture and when we started coming back doing our fund reserves a couple of years ago, wanted to kind of distinguish the portion that the fee payers pay for and what that supports. And then of course, breaking it down and showing that division between of the fines and fee revenue, the fines and penalty revenue compared to the fee portion. So before we move on, are there any questions regarding the fund condition? Again, definitely a projection at this point. But with us getting, better information with the our accounting reports, we're able to tie into the expenditure data, and come August, we'll have, again, better data. We may have almost the full year of expenditure data. There might be some prior adjustments that are going to, excuse me, some year-end closing data that we may not exactly have at that point, but we'll be able to pinpoint in a little bit better at that point.
David?
Yes, I believe Bob Gore has his hand up.
Yes, I did. A comment and a question. It would be good if you and Cassandra could, as soon as possible, update the charts from 2 years ago, both on WDPF and water rights. It's those I've sent in an email because we have no context for any of these numbers. And, it's the charts for fee fund growth for the past decade, program augmentation growth, budget augmentations and foundation shifts, and staffing expenditures by program. You're aware of them. They're very terrific. You and John did a couple of years ago. So if we could have those, it would be good. And then this is the question. What is the reserve, both current and projected, both amount and percentage? I don't see it listed. And then an add-on question, what are the chances of a reserve being swept by the Department of Finance for the deficit? Thank you.
So to answer your first question, if we scroll up to the top of the, if we can scroll to the slide right before this one. So we're for 23-24, the reserve we're projecting to end at $9.6 million. And so that's a 5.1% reserve. And then for 24-25, again, a forecast at this point, but we're looking at ending balance about 9.8 million, which would be a 4.9% reserve. To answer your question, Bob, we're, in the fall, we'll get direction on how to meet the reduction from what the Department of Finance is asking us to do, and what kind of direction that comes from. I know roughly, I believe it's around a 7% reduction in all of our funds. We'll have to, again, work with the Department of Finance to figure out how we're going to do that, basically. It's more or less, from my understanding, more of a budgeted authority, and so reduction in authority itself. So it may not, it may impact the reserve, but again, we'll have to kind of figure that out as we get more direction in the fall, Bob.
Yeah, so that wasn't on our agenda, but I did want to talk about two significant proposals that the administration has to reduce costs. Though I think we'll save that till maybe just before the open discussion, and I'll let you know what we know, which just a preview isn't a whole lot right now.
We may want to exchange information. I've talked to Joe Steppenshaw about those pending.
Okay, good. You probably know more than we do at this point then. So we
Thanks, Joe.
will talk about that. I will give you the information that we have
And,
here a little bit later in the program.
and David, I apologize for not realizing balance meant reserve. Sorry.
No problem. And then Bob, we'll look at the reports from those growth charts that we've put together. Yeah, Cassandra and I will look at them. I'll see how far we're in the process. I thought we were up to 22, 23. I know that 23, 24 will get close to updating. Um, but let Cassandra and I kind of take a step back and take a look at them.
Partial year would be fine. Thank
Good morning, Chuck. You have your hand up? Chuck, you're on.
Yeah, I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right.
I guess I'm a little bit confused about where the fee changes come in to affect the numbers on this table. The last line, the fee program ending balance, shows a deficit with no fee changes, and then with the last column, it shows you've got 10 million or so uh, uh, fund surplus.
Mhm.
But I thought this program was only based on penalties. Are the fee adjustments going to affect the amount of revenue that you come in with uh, fee fines and penalties?
So Bob, maybe to answer your question here, when you're looking at these two columns, the the column that states fiscal year 24, 25, no fee changes, that basically
Right.
means, like, of course, we're not going to take any fee structure to the board, knowing though that we have all these additional expenditures are hitting the fund. So when you look at our regulatory fees collected that year, they match where we land for 23, 24 at 188 million. However, when you come down and you look at the total program expenditures, the program expenditures are increasing to 201.8 million dollars, and we'll get into what's driving those budget cost drivers here in a second. So by doing that, of course, that draws the fund into a negative. And so the final column, of course, that basically shows, based on what our proposals that we're going to talk about are going to generate sufficient revenue that are going to cover the program and kind of maintain a prudent fund reserve.
Oh, okay. I guess I misunderstood at the beginning. I thought you said this chart shows things that aren't affected by fees, but they obviously are.
Right. The chart right below this, though, and then if we scroll back to that one, this is the one where this is specific to fines and penalty revenue,
Right.
and this portion, of course, doesn't support the our fee paying programs, and so we break them apart. So so you kind of have an understanding there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I do, but I, well, the gain loss in the last column is the same as the previous column. So I don't understand if there's what, how fee changes are affecting the gain loss, if at all. Are you
Yeah.
saying that? I'm
Um,
sure I'm missing something here.
Yeah, let me just give a quick overview again on what this chart here represents. So when you're looking at the gains and losses here, um, so again, kind of more into a vacuum. This is basically just breaking out. This chart is specifically the fines and penalties. So
Right.
when we're looking at fiscal year 23, 24, right now we have about $4.3 million in fines and penalty revenue that's within the WDPF that can't be used, of course, for the core water quality core regulatory work. This has to be spent by when the legislators augment this penalty revenue for certain uses. So when you come down, we're projecting to receive roughly around 900,000 in penalty assessments. And then we have a couple of expenditures there, about $1 million. And so when you look at the million and the 900, there's a loss of about 123,000, which then draws that down to now about 4.2 million. So that portion is, again, just fines and penalties. But when you scroll back up, that's more or less what the fee payers are concerned with, is that portion of the fund condition right here. And Chuck, I mean, I'd be happy if you want to sit down, you and I maybe have a a meeting to break this down and kind of go over. I'll be happy to do that with you.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest the same thing. So let me digest it a little bit, and then I'll get back with you.
Okay, sounds good. So let's move to the next portion of this, which are the waste discharge permit fund budget cost drivers. And these are the cost drivers that are part of the May revised fee setting budget. And I'm going to pass it to Cassandra White, who's going to handle this slide here.
Good morning. Excuse me. So we're going to look at the cost drivers, and the first table shows the fee setting budget for fiscal year 23-24, which was 187 million, followed by the governor's May revised fee setting budget of 201.8 million. And that was a net difference of 14.1 million, or 7.5%. And the second table below shows the primary cost drivers of that net difference shown above. So the first one is state operations. It has increased 6.9 million, or 3.7%, and it's primarily employee compensation, which is i.e. salaries, healthcare, retirement. Next table, our next item is pro rata. Pro rata has decreased approximately 1.1% or 0.6%. And the final cost driver category are the BCPs. And the first three are from the January proposed budget. The first one being the Gualala River TMDL stipulated settlement agreement. And the BCP cost was 1.7 million, or 0.9%. The second one is the Information Security Privacy Office Staff BCP. And the cost is 215,000, or 0.1%. And the third one is resources needed to address impacts on the project permitting resulting from recent Supreme Court decision, or maybe know it by the SACIT BCP. The cost is 6.1 million, or 3.3%. And I just wanted to note on footnote number 3, the BCP was revised since the handout was prepared. So to date, for the allocation for stormwater for fiscal year 25-26 has been deleted. And then the fourth and final BCP was added as of May revised. It is the Pajaro River Flood Risk Management Project. The BCP is for 225,000 or 0.1%. And I'm going to go into detail a little bit about each BCP. So if you could hold your questions to then, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so first one, the Gualala River. So this is a budget change proposal to support North Coast Water Board's efforts to satisfy the terms of stipulated settlement agreement, comply with Porter Cologne Water Quality Act, and fulfill the agency's obligations under the Federal Clean Water Act to protect, restore the Gualala River watershed from its settlement sediment impairment. And the 1.7, it would provide funding for 3 permanent PYs and contract funding of $1 million over the next 5 years, and then $706,000 annually. The second BCP, the Information Security and Privacy Office staffing, it's to enhance information security office staffing capabilities and establish a new privacy office. The new PY will provide staffing needs in areas of privacy, technical security, and information security compliance. The funding of with $629,000 is the total funding, and the WDPF's portion of that is $215,000, and but the total funding provides 4 PYs. And also the other, this is spread to all the funds, so the Safe Drinking Water account as well as the Water Rights Fund share in that cost. The third BCP, the resources needed on the impacts of permitting resulting from the recent Supreme Court decision, which is the second BCP. So the requested resources would be used to conduct essential water quality permitting and enforcement work that has historically been conducted by the United States Army Corps of Engineers and the United States Environmental Protection Agency, but will no longer be due to the 2023 Supreme Court decision to reduce federal jurisdiction over a number of water bodies. And as I mentioned before, there has been some change as of the May revise to this funding. And so it was 36 positions total over 2 years. Now it's been reduced to 26 positions and one-time IT contract costs for the first year. And then the second year, there was going to be 12 additional positions, 9 for the Water Quality CERT program and 3 for stormwater. The total fiscal year 25-26 resources have been deleted at this time. And then the fourth BCP was added since the May revise. And the purpose of this BCP is to provide resources to perform the necessary expedited project review and oversight of the Pajaro River Flood Management Project through AB 76 until its sunset in the year of 2035. And the funding will provide for 1 permanent PY. And those are all of the BCPs for the WDPF. And now we'll go to questions.
So Cassandra, let me just jump in real quick. Little highlight here. So the waste discharge permit fund is adjusting by roughly about $14.1 million from what we set fees from last year at $187 million. And so when you look at that, and that's basically a percentage change, about 7.5%. Now, again, of that 7.5%, about 7 million of it, or about 3.7%, is again state operations. And as Cassandra mentioned, of course, employee compensation, retirement, healthcare costs, and those numbers come from the Department of Finance, out of our control. And the majority of the other, of roughly about almost 6.5 million and roughly 3.4 million, of course, is related to SACIT and the River Flood Risk Management Project, AB 876. And those costs are all, at this point, are proposed to be spread to the 401 CERT fee payers. And so just kind of wanted to highlight that when you look at the 7.5%, bulk of it's going towards 401 CERT, and then half of it, or 3.7% of that, the 7 million, is the state operations cost. So I believe Chuck has his hand up first.
Unmuting. Yes, I'm unmuted. Yeah, thanks. I think I raised this question at the last one, and quite frankly, I'm a little vague on what the response, if there was one. But I get some of the statewide expenses being addressed by every fee payer, but I'm still grappling with the Guala River and the Pajaro River being spread, not being covered not by just the people in those watersheds, but by the entire state. And I was wondering if you could kind of address that, which appears to be kind of a disconnect to me, anyways.
So I know we have some of the executive management from the Division of Water Quality on the line. Perhaps like to chime in um, on this one here.
Let's see.
Hey, Dave, this is Phil Crater, and I'm sorry I was transferring between phone and computer format, and I only got about half of that.
So the question is, when we look at the Guala River TMDL budget change proposal, we're looking at spreading those, staff's proposal at this point is spreading those costs off to all fee payers statewide. And so kind of the question comes to, because it's, one section of the state, why is everyone paying for it?
I mean, the general issue there is that it's still part of our foundational programs and that there are costs that we incur at the State Water Board to track, do the database support, and to support the programs. And so that was the thought behind that. Just it's part of foundational programs, and like all other TMDLs, they're spread across the state.
Correct.
Well, I think understand your argument, but the only people benefiting are the ones in that watershed, I think. And this stipulated settlement agreement, I don't think fee payers outside of the Guala River were involved in that process. At least I know I wasn't. And so it just seems a little bit unreasonable that somebody, Imperial Irrigation District down in the desert, would be paying some additional fees to cover these costs if we weren't provided the opportunity to participate in the settlement agreement. I guess we probably were if we'd thought about it, but we certainly weren't noticed that this was going to be a result in increase in fees. And I'm not sure if my argument makes sense. Given your viewpoint that it's all part of foundational programs, but still, it just seems a little bit unfair that we would be paying a fee on some process that we weren't a party to.
I appreciate that, and I understand that. I don't think that we have a way to really disentangle this foundational component of this thing from any of our other ones. So I don't know if billing wise it's even a possibility for us to do the accounting that you're asking about. But again, I understand this is a specific BCP, but it's not unlike any of our other TMDL programs where we do cover them, even though they're watershed specific. We cover the cost statewide.
Well, I'll accept that response for now, and we may continue talking about this.
I appreciate your concern. I do, and I understand that it's not probably the most satisfying answer.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, though, Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, good morning, Bob. See, Bob's still on mute, I believe.
There we go. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Excellent. In defense of the water board staff on a policy level, spreading costs for regional benefits across all of us is superficially kind of irksome, but it becomes a lot more pleasant when your region all of a sudden gets to share the cost statewide. And sooner or later, all of the regions get to do this. So there's that. To the program staff, Phil and others, for that SAC at BCP, I spoke to the LAO about it, Sonia, and it would be good, I believe, especially for accountability, if the board program staff phased SAC it in as need be to a certain extent, we may be out over our skis on anticipating what the Army Corps, I work with them a lot through SAFCA, will or won't do. I understand the concern, but golly, a measured response on a 3.3% out of 7.5% cost driver sure would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Bob. We have an email question.
Yeah, this is from Noelle Kramers at the Wine Institute. What was the original overall cost for the Sackett decision BCP prior to the May revise? Just wanting to see how it compares to the current 6.1 million costs.
The 6.1 stayed the same. Their change did not affect fiscal year 24-25 at all. It was just 25-26, which was, I'm looking to see if I have the original.
Yeah, for the 24-25, from the January's proposed to the May revised, that portion of the funding has not changed, but there was again a second year, the 25-26, or some additional funding that's been adjusted. And we could try to pull that up here in a moment. Are there any other questions on the email? Not seeing or hearing any. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. And so here's the waste discharge permit fund program budget details. Column A there, of course, is all the core regulatory programs. 24-25, there's the fee setting budget in the May revise. So as we've displayed on the fund condition, we're projecting expenditures to be $201.8 million. Here's the revenue forecast. Again, under the current fee structure, if we didn't do anything, we're projected to collect about $188.4 million, which is basically a deficit of basically 13.3 million. So we're trying to draw to, or try to draw to the 13.3 million. So what is the adjusted revenue to collect the 201.8 million? And so column F is what, at this point, is what our average program percent changes would be for each program. And so as you go down the line, WDR is projected to have about 5.3% increase in adjustment in fees. Land disposal 2.3. Of course, because of the Sackett, the water quality 401 cert is projected to have a 41.1%. NPDS stormwater 3. NPDS wastewater 1.5, CAF 5.5, ag lands, irrigated lands regulatory program 5.7, and then the cannabis 5.7. So basically roughly anywhere between 2.3 and 5.7% fee increases. Of course, the outlier there is the 401 cert program because of the budget change proposal with Sackett. I will say that some of these programs, there's a slight decrease from what we presented in March. And again, as we get to August, as we start to tie into the revenues and our expenditures, again, there's an opportunity for us to see if there's some ability to make some adjustments at that point also. But as of right now, based on our forecast, these percentages in the programs would generate the revenue sufficient to cover our program cost. Chuck, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm probably going to demonstrate my ignorance, but you've used the acronym a couple of times. SACIT, I think it is. I can't pull what the meaning out of my head or air, so I wonder if you could explain that a little bit.
Well, if you going back, go back up a couple of slides there with the budget cost drivers. I think it's right there. So when you look at the budget cost drivers, if you look at the the budget change proposal for 24-25, it says resources needed to address impacts on project permitting resulting from the recent Supreme Court decisions. The acronym basically for that is referred to as SACIT.
Oh, okay.
6.1 million. So I apologize for that. I thought Cassandra might have said that, but that's what we're referring to.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey, Dave, can I jump in? This is Karen Mogan.
Yes, please.
Just to be clear, SACIT is the Supreme Court case was SACIT versus US EPA. The decision pulls back federal jurisdiction on waters of the US, which then caused the state to have to use state authority to regulate waters of the state. Our waters of the state are a broader group of waters than waters of the US. As waters of the US contract, we need to use our state authority and therefore our state resources to regulate the waters of the state in terms of dredge and fill activities and protecting wetlands. So that's sort of the more programmatic description of what SACIT is. And Phil, if you want to add anything, that'd be great.
Thanks, Karen. That's spot on. The only thing that I'll add is that as part of the Corps' responsibilities under the former procedures, they would do a lot of the work up front for the water boards, including, delineating water bodies, providing maps, working with applicants. They're pulling away in that area, and those services need to be backfilled. The proposal here is to make sure that we have staff available to do that, not only to continue to meet existing permitting needs, but also to develop new general permits that will be administratively easier for us to administer and more rapid for permittees to get coverage. And so the idea here is we don't want to become a bottleneck to infrastructure, housing, or restoration projects in the state, and this is what we're doing to backstop that.
Thanks.
Good morning, Ellen. You have your hand up?
This is Ellen Weir on behalf of the Water Foundation. That was my question is the board already seeing increased workloads, increased permit applications, and gaps that are needing to be filled at this time in light of the SACIT decision?
So the answer, it's a sort of a conditional somewhat we are. We're not seeing them yet to the extent that we anticipated, but we also we've looked very closely at the data, and there's some confounding factors. One is that development really slowed down during the pandemic, and we're just kind of on the uptick recovering from that. And another issue is that we have talked to some applicants who were under the impression, because the federal permitting authority was not taking action on their project, that they simply did not need a permit at all. So we think that there's a new set of people out there who may not realize that they need a permit. So part of what we're doing really is to make sure that we've got permits ready and permitting staff available to consult, to answer questions, and again, to turn around applications so that we don't become a bottleneck. So, and again, the direct answer is yes, we have seen somewhat of an uptick, again, just not as significant as we expected.
Bob, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. And Phil, thank you very much for that detail. And this goes to the larger point that we make, fee payers, over the past couple of years. We would appreciate metrics, not expenditure data so much as, okay, we've implemented the second BCP. This is the benefit to fee payers. We processed X number of permits. We did this, the actual quantification of what it is we're paying for and the results. Again, not so much task performance, which is in the BCP, 2,000 hours of this, 3,000 hours of that, but you guys got this and you got this. And WDPF and Karen in the past have been very good at outlining this, and it would be good going forward, especially with a huge impact like this BCP, to let us know what we got. And thanks again, Phil.
Yeah, Bob, thank you. You're welcome. And thanks for the recommendation. I will tell you that in order to sort of make sure that we're using any new resources most appropriately, we are watching closely to see where the impacts occur. We have a report that we've produced for many years. It's the performance report. I know a number of you are familiar with it, and we do track on metrics. We've expanded the metrics and tracking in the 401 certification water quality cert program, because we wanted to make sure that we were being good stewards of the money. And so we do have some pretty detailed tracking there. And the nice thing is that it began before the pandemic and before SACIT. We just want to see if we're still tracking the correct metrics or if there's things that we need to modify, and we will continue to pay attention to that.
It would be good, since you're the newest deputy director, in the future to help us by excerpting relevant performance report data. It's a dense report, hard to go through, and if we could have specific applicable data, it would be good, if it's not too much trouble. So thanks.
Yeah, Bob, thanks. That's a good suggestion. We'll be happy to take a look at it. I think one issue with doing that now again is that the issue is still, it's very fluid right now. And so we just want to get enough data where we can actually say something with some certainty. But we are aiming in that direction, and I appreciate the input.
I'd like to weigh in here too, in that the question about have we seen an uptick in applications, and Phil responded to that appropriately. We also have seen a somewhat decrease in some types of applications because there is a perception that a permit is no longer needed now that SACIT is in place. And so when we're talking about metrics, and when you read the BCP, you'll see that a lot of the resources that we've requested are to get boots on the ground at the regional boards, to be responding to complaints and getting out in the field to see where projects are proceeding without proper authorization. So some of the metrics are going to be responding to complaints and enforcement actions related to projects that should be permitted that aren't.
Before we move forward, I just wanted to say I have the impact information for the deleted SACIT. So for fiscal year 25-26, originally it was supposed to be about 2.2 million. And that broken down was 1.6 million was going to go to 401 cert for 9 PYs, and about 550,000 would go to the stormwater program for 3 PYs.
Thank you, Cassandra. Chuck, you have your hand up? Looks like.
Yeah, so SACIT really, I don't know why I didn't recognize the term, but it was basically on wetlands, right? For the most part, encroachment of development on wetlands is the principal outcome of that whole decision. Am I correct on that?
So generally, the decision, it's pretty specific, and it curtails the Fed's authority over certain water bodies. Wetlands are probably one of the more, it's disconnected, and there's certain specific kinds of wetlands that are the more prominent features.
Right. Okay.
But I should add, sorry, Phil Wiles from the Office of Chief Counsel. Chuck, no, SACIT actually, although the case in front of the court involved wetlands,
right.
The decision was much broader in terms of narrowing the scope of all types of waters that could be considered waters of the U.S. going forward. So it definitely will apply to many of our streams that are not running most times of the year. And so it's going to have a major impact on not just wetlands, but also a lot of our surface water, other surface water bodies.
So like ephemeral streams that you...
Ephemeral, and there's going to be a lot of debate over intermittent streams as well.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
You mean puddles?
So we have an email question. Go ahead, Sarah, if you'd like to read it.
Okay, this is from Jackie Chisholm from Provost and Pritchard Consulting Group. Have there been any recent conversations or updates regarding the possible restructuring of the ag lands fees?
So the answer right now is no. We're not looking into restructuring at this time. However, we've established a working group. We've had a meeting about a month ago or so, and so internally, and we'll continue to kind of work on these conversations as we move forward. But for this billing cycle, there's no restructuring of the ag lands program at this time. Bob, you have your hand up?
Yeah, if I can help. Brianna St. Pierre had the meeting. I would urge the questioner to get in touch with Brianna. And the CDFA is also engaged on this. It's the very beginning of an effort we've long sought, and it's very constructive. So please reach out to Brianna, and she'll loop you in.
Chuck, you have your hand up?
Yes. You mentioned meetings, just internal meetings to the water board. I don't recall hearing a public meeting regarding the restructuring of ag land fees, or maybe Bob's he's more up on it than I am. But so I presume there would be some public discussion, certainly with fee payers, about how that would be worked into your future program changes.
Yes, if correct, Bob. If excuse me, Chuck. As we start to form more of a formal working group and have further discussions, we'll have an opportunity to invite others, and then Chuck, definitely your feedback and involvement would be instrumental in the process.
Is there any written documentation that's publicly available on this issue? Okay,
No.
But there will be.
Yes, as we coordinate internally, as we move forward. Yes, Chuck.
Thank you.
So I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. And then, of course, oh, Ellen, you have your hand up.
I have one more question based on Cassandra's description of FY 25-26 funding that was deleted from the BCP. Is there funding proposed in 24-25 budget for additional stormwater program resources as a result of SACIT? And if not, do you expect there to be some deficits in coverage for that program in the coming year?
There is no stormwater allocation for fiscal year 24-25. And the program can speak to the other part of your question.
There is an allocation in general for staff to come on and develop some general permits. As part of the package, we have to determine which general permits they're going to work on. There are stormwater general permits that we think will need to be developed to take the same general approach that we take under our general NPDES stormwater permits for waters of the state. So that is something that we need to do. We're going to have to prioritize it based on the needs when the staff come on.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, thank you. Since I don't see any other questions, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which has to do with water recycling. And assisting with this from the Division of Water Quality is Laura McClellan.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Hey,
Laura.
would you like me to go through this slide, or are you going to do it?
Well, I guess maybe we can give a little bit of a background, kind of how we got here right now. Maybe
Sure.
I'll just start just a little timeline, and then please jump in. We've had a couple of already specific stakeholder meetings with the representatives from the water recycling community. And we had a comment period where we listened to the comments and we went ahead and made some kind of restructurings and some new proposals. I think we're up to a couple of different options. And so recently we've been, we worked with executive management, and part of the direction is that the cost of the 15 recycled water permitting positions would be distributed across all MPDS wastewater and WD fee payers, which is consistent with the fee structure from 23-24 fee schedule. And so based on that, we now have a new concept that we'd like to discuss. We don't have the actual dollar amounts that we're looking; those are going to be determined, and at a future stakeholder meeting, we'll go through those discussions. But we are looking at a fee structure that's based on recycled water production, both potable and non-potable. And then, of course, having a flat fee or a set fee for recycled water distribution and or use. And those are permits issued for recycled water distribution and or use only. And so that was kind of high level, but I'll pass it on to Laura, and Laura can kind of give more of the details.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Dave. So yeah, we got a lot of really valuable input from interested parties in the first couple of stakeholder meetings, one in April, one in mid-May. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback we received was that the board needs to be incentivizing and encouraging the use of recycled water, and that there was quite a bit of sticker shock amongst proposed fee payers for the potential cost of the proposed fees. So a couple of the proposals that we had previously floated, initially we were looking at recycled water production kind of tiers of fees based on the design flow of the wastewater facility that the recycled water is produced at. And then based on some feedback that we received, we revised that to propose tiers for consideration that would be based on the volume of recycled water produced rather than the design flow of the facility. And so now that we've actually just recently gotten this potential third option, which is to distribute the cost of the 15 recycled water permitting positions more broadly than just amongst the recycled water fee payers. And so based on that feedback, we're going to have to kind of go back and look at the numbers and come up with a couple of additional proposals for folks to consider. So we don't have numbers for you today, but this is kind of the potential concept for what we're thinking about, and definitely welcome input and feedback on this concept or items for us to consider as we are moving forward with developing those additional options.
Thank you, Laura. Chuck, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. When you do get around to, I presume you're heading in the direction on your third option that we don't know about yet, but how will you be able to identify those areas of the state that we're going to be subject to this recycling? Or is there enough knowledge on all the various recycling projects that are in the works to be able to get a sense of where the benefit is going to go?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we actually have a really good data set for where recycling is happening in the state. It is really statewide. There are around 700 wastewater facilities whose volumes we track, and about half of those, a third to a half of those, are currently producing recycled water. And it really, goes from north to south. As you can imagine, there are higher volumes of recycling happening in Southern California, but
Right.
there are recycled water programs statewide, and it's not focused in one particular area.
Okay, that's helpful. You said 700 and one third are currently engaged. Is the remainder of the 700 planning to do so? You have some indication that it's a high probability of recycling water?
Yeah, so we don't track every single wastewater facility in the state. We track facilities that have greater than 20,000 gallons per day, so are not on-site wastewater treatment systems. So we're tracking the vast majority of them. We have asked in the past, are you considering developing a recycled water program in the future? If so, what volume are you considering pursuing? And so from that, we do expect an increase. There's lots of state funding for recycled water projects and a lot of drive to pursue that increase. I don't think we'll ever see all 700, with a recycling program, but the goal is to be increasing that number over time. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's around 260 or so of those 700 that are currently producing recycled water. And some dating back to, the 60s, others more recently. So yeah, there's a wide variety of types of wastewater facilities with different treatment levels and different use types. And so with this potential fee, we're trying to focus on what types of recycled water projects are more staff intensive to develop and oversee the permits for. And one of the things we found through that is that potable water recycling projects are significantly more staff intensive than non-potable. So that's why you're seeing that difference here.
And for the most part, these are municipal treatment plants for municipal wastewater, or
yes.
I'm not aware of any for agricultural wastewater, but I'm just curious if that is even a significant blip on your radar screen or what.
Yeah, so this world is just what we're looking at here is just the facilities receiving domestic wastewater. So the vast majority of those are municipal.
Thank you.
Rebecca, you had your hand up. I wasn't sure if you wanted to add a comment or something.
Yeah, I was just gonna point that we have I can't put anything in the chat or anything, but if Chuck wants to follow up with us, we can share the volumetric annual report of wastewater and recycled water website, which has a really great map that shows all of the recycled water across the state, and those identified 750 wastewater treatment plants that are doing this reporting, and to just make sure that Laura's number was correct. Yes, it is 260 plants that are currently recycling water.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Sharon, I think you're next in the queue. Good morning, Sharon.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I wanted to first start out by thanking staff because we have been involved with the stakeholder meetings and the several different meetings that you've had, and including coming to our association meetings. It's been very helpful and a very a good process, I think, for us to understand what the thinking is, and even being able to look at the spreadsheet of the different facilities, and just understanding better the different options that you all have been developing. One thing that would be helpful, and it was kind of a question I already had, because I believe that what was just described in terms of having a number, it wasn't maybe the whole 15, but it was maybe 13 positions distributed across a bigger base of fee payers for this current fiscal year, that already was in place. So we've already been doing it that way. And I believe, and I guess I want to confirm this, that what you're proposing is just to continue that with a little bit of an increase from the amount that was done for FY 23-24, because the number of authorized positions is going up for 24-25. And it sounds like you still have to, kind of flush out those options and how that would sort of ripple through. But one thing that I had been thinking about as a question earlier in the meeting, but I was kind of holding off until we got to this part, was in those overview tables, kind of where's the recycled water permit fees? Are they even shown? It seems like they must be because they're in the bottom line numbers, I would think. So I didn't quite know how you were baking those in already. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, no, exactly, Sharon. So for one, you're correct. As you remember with the water strategy BCP last year, what we did was we adjusted fees on all WDRs and MPDS wastewater fee payers roughly around 0.75% to generate, I believe it's around 3.4 million, which was part of that 15 positions for the BCP. And so right now, staff's proposing that we continue that process. So there's not any change there. With this said, though, once we figure out what these dollar amounts are, we are going to generate additional revenue. That revenue goes into the WDR, the MPDS pots of budget, fee revenue, which has, based on our projections, have lowered WDR and MPDS slightly. Basically maybe by like 0.25%. So kind of going back to our March stakeholder meetings, when you looked at those percentages and kind of what we're proposing now, they're slightly lower. And again, it's kind of based on what we forecast on the additional revenue based on this concept and proposal here.
Thank you. I do have another comment, but I can wait and get back in the queue.
Okay. Chuck, do you have your hand up?
Yes, indeed. I keep thinking of little questions to ask. My apologies for taking up so much space, but your lead-in paragraph on this slide says all NPDS-wastewater and WDR fee payers. Does that include WDRs on agricultural activities? That doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Maybe you need to clarify that statement.
So yeah, we're only spreading to the waste discharge requirement program, not the ag land portion. So only right now, the MPDS wastewater and the WDR permit holders, those fees were adjusted in 23-24 to cover the 15 recycled water permitting positions.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Rosario, good morning. You have your hand up.
Good morning. I'm assuming you can hear me okay, David. I just wanted to thank you for all the time you've taken with us. And in particular, we're excited that we may just return to what seems to be working, which is last year's practice. And so I just wanted to thank you for that. And we really look forward to whenever information is available that you can circulate further. But and we just appreciate you working with us and setting up all these meetings and just kind of helping us flesh out the best option. So thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Sharon.
Thanks. I just wanted to amplify one point, which is that, I kind of, for the benefit of other fee payers, that we already pay fees for a lot of, for all of our wastewater facilities. So they're already all paying either an MPDES fee or a WDR fee. In addition, for reuse projects, we already are paying for the Division of Drinking Water to review engineering reports. And that's more of a fee for service, but we already pay for all of that staff time. So we are already paying substantially. And then also a number of other activities, such as if you're enrolled under the general permit for non-potable reuse, there's already a fee for that. So I wanted to just make this point. We're not like kind of trying to get a free ride or anything. We're going to be paying whatever the fees, however they're distributed, we're going to be paying those. And, there's just a lot of different policy considerations. And as Rosario said, I think we are supportive of this one because it's state policy to encourage water recycling and to not create additional kind of disincentives for those who are planning new projects or might be thinking about getting into recycling. It would be helpful to kind of keep the fees on a kind of at a reasonable level. So thanks. That's it.
Thank you. So just kind of next steps on this as internally we continue to kind of move forward with this concept. We'll be looking at, kind of reaching out for another stakeholder meeting and/or, of course, having more information at the August 1st water quality fee stakeholder meeting. And there are no other questions through the emails. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and which is open discussion. But before we get to open discussion, I was going to open it back up to John Russell, who had a few updates on the budget process.
Yeah, so everything you heard previously is what we know about the budget right now. Excuse me. There's a couple proposals in play that are not included, and we have very little information on those proposals. The first is, and these have all been in the newspaper, so they're not secret. I'm not talking at a school or anything. But the first is a proposed vacancy sweep. The administration is proposing to sweep up to 10,000 vacancies. We do not know what our share of that will be. And the second proposal is an approximately 8% cut in our overall budget. Well, in our budget. For that proposal, we don't know if it's going to be restricted to just general fund or if it's going to be across all of our funds or what it'll be. So conceptually, we know these are coming. The Department of Finance has told us that they'll tell us more information in the fall and on how to implement these and what they actually will be. So depending on when we know that information, we will potentially be going back and re-looking at our fees because we're taking those are two major potential cuts, and obviously if we get those cuts, it will affect fees, and it'll mean that fees will potentially be going down. But right now we just don't have the information to even evaluate those, what they are in terms of the present fees or anything. So this is, I guess, just a heads up that be prepared that we may have to, we don't even know what the timing of this is. There's a lot of unknowns, and I know that's not a very satisfactory answer to anybody either, but we just don't know. We've been told the fall. I'm actually hoping by the fall they mean August, September, and not, October, November. We're hoping we get information on these prior to our fee adoption meeting, which is scheduled for late September. If we do, we'll probably have another stakeholder meeting just to let you know what the impacts will be prior to our adoption of the fees in September. But it could even be that we get these changes late enough that we'll have to do another fee adoption meeting after September to see if we can revise the fees to accommodate it. But there's a lot of moving parts right now in this year's budget. That's a long-winded way of saying we just don't have all the information right now to be able to give to you. But as soon as we do get it and are able to evaluate it, we'll, like I said, hopefully be able to incorporate it into the July or August stakeholder meeting, but we might need to have another sort of supplementary stakeholder meeting just to discuss them. And Bob, I probably will be talking to you offline just to see what you've heard, because essentially everything we've heard is what you've all seen in the newspaper at this point.
Okay.
Chuck?
Yeah, you say 10,000 vacancies statewide. Do you have any sense of how many vacancies you have within the state water board system, including regional boards?
At any given time, we have about 200 to 250 vacancies. So we don't know what our share of that 10,000 is going to be. I mean,
and you're scrambling madly right now to fill as many as you can, as quickly as you can.
We're not actually doing that. We're being
joking
strategic about this. we are scrambling to fill our high priority vacancies, but
Sure.
we are holding some because we don't want to totally fill up if we're going to get cut.
Okay. And if there is a cutback, it would be done across all the agencies, all 10,000, certain percentage, or it could be targeted on certain programs and not others?
I have no idea.
You have no idea.
I can't. I don't even want to speculate on that.
Yeah, probably a good decision on your part.
Bobby, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, historically, special fund have been exempt from reductions because of the revenue flow. So I wouldn't hold your breath expecting permit fee reductions. However, we're not going to get the news until it's going to be on an ongoing basis, incremental, based upon next year's revenue flow as well, 25, 26. Also, the budget process just generally has become opaque, and it won't be resolved until the governor gets done signing or vetoing budget trailer bills, which means September 30th is theoretically the final date when budget decisions are made. But again, it could be dribs and drabs simply because of the deficit nature of the deficit. So what I'm getting at is everyone needs to be flexible and stay in touch.
Yeah, typically by this time in the year, in the budget year, the budget's been pretty much ironed out. Talks are still ongoing between, the legislature and the administration right now. So it's a lot of late year activity in this, and it's all due to the deficit that we find ourselves in, which is probably going to last another 2 or 3 years, according to LAO and finance. Sharon, I think you had your hand up, but.
Yeah, I had a question, which I think I know the answer to, but maybe not, which is whether any portion, or if you're able to quantify what portion of core regulatory programs, which I think are intended to be generally covered by the WDPF, revenue, is there a portion still on general fund? Because I thought they had shifted everything to, permit fees in past deficit situations, but it occurred to me just now, I wonder if there's any lingering portion that is still on general fund that could be impacted or shifted for that matter.
Yeah, no, you're correct. The core water quality programs are all fee supported at this point for the most part. We do have a little bit of general fund support in the water rights program, but that's where most of our general funding for staff is in the water rights program.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so that was just a little blurb telling you I don't know what we don't know at this point. So stay tuned.
So we're at the open discussion portion of the meeting, and so if anyone wants to add anything, looking at the hands up, and Bob, you have your hand up.
Thanks. Couple things real quick. Let's continue to develop meaningful metrics. The recycling permits is a perfect example. We also, that is, fee payers, need to continue to develop with whoever the new legislative deputy is, some sort of sincere joint legislative education effort. For example, on supply and demand, which gets to recycling, it would be good if we could go to legislators, legislative staffs, not necessarily together, but to coordinate on education and awareness about the costs of these programs before legislation gets passed, rather than run around arguing with each other at this meeting, which that does no good anyway, about implementation costs. And the last thing is, these might morph into, instead of, like you've pointed out, meaning the water board, instead of fee focused, cost management focused, which means a year-round genuine give and take process. And with all due respect, we fully understand that BCPs are confidential. Got it. But if we could talk about in the future anticipated by a general trending nature. That is, we anticipate this program's going to grow, this one's flat. So let's talk about how to contain costs going forward. Sure would be beneficial rather than to focus on dealing with recent history. That's my 2 cents, and you've heard it before, but I'm saying it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Don't see any additional questions online, and no questions from the emails at this time.
While there's a little lull, I'll say what I always say as well. This isn't meant to be the be all and end all of our discussion. And if you have any questions that you think of after this meeting, don't hesitate to reach out to David or Cassandra or myself, and we'd be happy to get you the answer or try to find the answer for you. But definitely don't hesitate to reach out.
Good morning, Ellen.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a general comment in support of this. I know it's tough for those of us who are very alarmed by the potential implications of the Sackett decision for our state and for waters of the state. We know you have a lot of work ahead of you, and we know you need resources in order to not be that regulatory bottleneck that we all kind of see coming. There's a lot of uncertainty right now. So we understand that it's going to be a significant increase for the regulated community, and that's concerning, but we also see the benefits of addressing this head on so that we can all get some more certainty and some more programmatic efforts to fill that gap. So thanks for all that you do and for having these workshops.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, so moving into next steps, our next scheduled water quality fee stakeholder meeting is August 1st at 9 o'clock. And of course, we'll be discussing updates from the July enacted budget. And of course, we're driving to a board meeting in September. I believe it's either going to be September 17th or 18th. I believe as of right now, it looks like it's the 18th, but more to come on that. And of course, we try to drive about a week before the August 1st meeting to have the stakeholder handout out. And then again, as John mentioned, as you start to review this handout, if you have any questions, please go ahead and reach out to me. Anything needs to be clarified. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Cassandra. So again, I wanted to thank everyone today for participating in this meeting. We appreciate everyone's feedback and input. Thanks to all the water board program staff that's involved in this, and of course, the fee staff behind the scenes for coordinating this meeting. Again, look forward to a meeting here in August, and that ends the meeting for today. I appreciate everyone's time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.